Hey everybody, Brady here from BGWX. I hope you all are having a happy holidays, but we got a we got an exciting wintry pattern that we got to break down for y'all. So again, take a walk with me. Let's break down what's going on here. This is the current GFS, so we'll slide back to 18Z, and we're just gonna break things down here. And I'm gonna tell you guys what I think on how this might play out here. The idea, storm threats to keep an eye on down the road. Who's at play to get cold air? Who's at play to get snow? And I think there's a lot of the eastern U.S. here at play to have a potentially loaded January winter pattern here. And I think this could end up being really, really exciting. So let's kind of break down here as we play this out. So again, we're back to 500 height because again, the problem I have here, if we go here, I love 500 millibar vorticity. I love it. You guys, y'all know that follow me. You know, I really really do love me my 500 vort. But again, 500. Well, let's go with the black again. 500 millibars in the atmosphere. If this is our vertical column, imagine from where you're living and you go all the way straight up in a 3D column of the atmosphere. We call this, what we would say about this is 850 millibars. We would call that around there. We would call this somewhere around here about 250, and then we would call this about 500, and somewhere in here would be 700. So we start looking at the upper levels of the atmosphere here at 500 millibars. That's what we'll call it. Again, millibars stands for level of pressure, and again, low pressure means pressure, the column, right? Sinking, low pressure, right, and high pressure, rising pressure, that column. So that's kind of a way to look at it as it moves over you. But the problem I'm having with vorticity right now is it's such a cluttered mess that it's really hard. Now we do have a storm to track, I think, kind of. I'm having trouble with it because it's kind of more of an interior focused. Notice it's not always perfect. The 540 line isn't perfect, but that blue line you notice there, it does kind of represent, this is kind of where our cold air is with this system next weekend. So we might start tracking this. We might start going live again. Reminder, I do go live for a lot of these systems. So again, hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notifications if you want to, don't miss any of that on YouTube. But this is kind of that 540 line, and that's the general idea. A lot of our cold air that's entering for literally on January 1st, we're already going to have a system, and this is going to be a lot of rain, bring up a lot of warmer air here. You can see we have a strong ridge here to the south and east of us, and it's from the specific air that's still working itself out through the country. And we saw this we're seeing this Canadian warm up that's literally happening. And again, high pressure still in place, but that's going to kind of only be able to hold so much, right? Because we have the CAD setup going on. We'll have a freezing rain threat as well. But the idea is with this system, we have something to watch, but a lot of our cold air is still back here, and our upper level energy out here, it's going to be hard to wrap in that cold air in time to get enough for a potential snow threat for the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. Now, on the backside, as this is going to be a strong low pressure system, that wraps up, and once it does start intensifying and pulling in more cold air, we will see probably a chance at a significant lake effect event, but we will also have to start being concerned about the potential for maybe some backside snow potentially for some people, depending on what happens in the evolution of that system. That's just a general idea. So that kind of breaks down that system just a little bit. You can see that is the cold air that then moves through as that 540 line collapses, and you can see that storm really start to intensify, that upper level energy here start to consolidate better, really kind of wraps up. It does slow down, so it's kind of a shame we don't get that cold air just in time, and otherwise we could have maybe had a pretty significant system. But all the less, we still set the stage in place for that cold air to come on through. So we have another system probably likely not going to be able to make it in time for something massively significant. It'll likely be pretty still too fast to flow, too suppressed. But as we move here into January, this is kind of the time frame now. I said it was January 4th to 6th. This time frame is kind of changing a little bit to more a January 6th to 7th, that time frame, because we were looking at this period here for maybe something, and now it's kind of looking like this might be the time frame to keep an eye for first more widespread threat of a system, and then beyond that we look at another one after potentially. I think there's the opportunity for multiple. I know I've seen some conjecture that we can't get both. Now I think it would be hard to get two blockbuster hits out of both of them. It'd be a little bit hard because a little bit of a chain reaction effect on one or the other. But if we slide back to 500 millibar heights here, notice we will see there's that storm we were just breaking down and tracking. You see it gets pretty strong, and it does hold in our cold air. We see a western ridge, our positive P&A develop, and also those height lines out here in the western U.S. start to build, and we start getting that troughing, those blue lines to build in the east, and that's always a sign for cold air locked in a potential storm pattern. Just a little bit too late, again, likely with that system, so I'll have to keep an eye on it just in case you can get a little bit more stream separation between that January 1st to 2nd system and that system, but likely just a little bit too progressive. Maybe keep an eye on mid-Atlantics and southern places for some possible light snow maybe down the line, but it's still so far out. And again, the problem I have with 500 millibar vorticity right now is look how active we are in the pattern. There's so much going on. There's a lot of upper level energy. Again, 500 millibar vort is just how strong the spin is. It's measuring that cyclonic flow, how strong it is at 500 millibars. And when an area you start to see it push together and consolidate, it's an indication of a stronger system. But you can see how messy it is. It's spread out. The polar vortex starts to get involved here. And if you notice, this is January 8th out here. Right, it kind of starts to get messy. Here's a lobe of the polar vortex, a little bit of a stretch going on here, starts to get involved. We still have a large western ridge and just a lot of energy here across the US here, and that really causes problems for models when there's a lot of different areas for them to potentially consolidate energy. It really affects everything that happens after. So operational runs are going to be really, really messy, even into the shorter term, into the medium range as well. So nothing is really locked in terms of specific setups, but the general idea for setups still very much present, and I kind of think we're locking on to a couple time frames here, so we can slide from the GFS operational to the Jeff's ensemble here, and you can see the OZ starting to load out. But the same idea here again is developing, where we're looking at an opportunity here. Notice those height lines a little bit too progressive in this period, that 4th to 5th, but now the 6th, 7th, 8th time frame, kind of 6th to 8th time frame, and then maybe you could almost call it an 8th to 10th depending on what happens. Now, I can't really identify exactly the two time frames that we do end up seeing develop, because it's a little bit hard to say when exactly. We still have to figure out a lot of stuff in the medium range first that have to sort themselves out. But the general idea that if we zoom even more out here to North America, we start to see our Pacific, notice our troughing here in the Pacific start to quiet down a little bit. We'll see that western ridge develop here. And those blue, again, indicating those height lines sinking, and we see an areas of low pressure under those blue, those stronger into the purples, and that goldish purple kind of that starts to develop. And then those height lines to the west, we have the classic western ridge, and we have that block over Canada. We're seeing a negative NAO, we call it, our North Atlantic Oscillation. We see that develop up here in Canada, indicative of looking at over Greenland. That's kind of the idea, that Greenland block there, it locks in high pressure. And what it does is, when you have your high pressure over this area and you have a western ridge, notice it doesn't allow storms to be able to just come across. Storms kind of have to come over this ridge now, sink down, and when they come up, they can't come up too far and cut, because of the blocking you have in place here. And that's kind of the idea. And you lock in a low pressure to be able to sink, dive, and then you have a little bit of almost a 50-50 low signature here, where ideally you could get some ridging to build back in here and allow a storm to be able to really sink. The deeper, I think some of the keys to this pattern here is I do have a little bit of a concern on the flow being a little bit too fast, maybe for potential, all out blockbuster. Maybe I think that period could be at, the end of a pattern change potentially, and we'll have to keep an eye on that. But the more that we can deepen our trough here and allow ridging to kind of build back almost, because if you build back ridging all across this area now, then you're going to force a storm to be able to have to come up and make a classic track for potentially this kind of area to maybe get involved. And yes, even as far as the south, the more you dig your trough, meaning increase the amplitude, get more vertical with your trough, the more you're going to allow energy to consolidate in a tightly wound up area. And again, more you can send precip going vertical, the longer duration of event you can get to versus coming from the side off. Again, that's not always the case. Again, 50-50 low setups and you have a slow developing system where something can lock in, you can still get more of a southwest flow, kind of slows down, locks up, and you get that easterly flow off a negatively tilted trough. Again, that's kind of the idea. Remember, positively tilted trough, neutral, negative. So that's kind of the idea. And we look for negatively tilted troughs. Again, this is a great spot for a neutral tilted trough right here. You can see kind of the idea. It's hard on ensemble means, but the general idea is we're moving into a stormier, colder pattern locked into place, and I think this will have an opportunity to continue and persist beyond this time frame as well. I think there's an opportunity for January to be a really, really good month for a lot of people that love the snow and especially the cold. That's the thing. We have the cold air in place for an extended period of time. Forget models for a second here. Meteorology, what are the models suggesting, right? I know that sounds that sounds a little contradictory for me from what I'm saying, a little hypocritical. But the thing is, you have to look at what's the general theme on models, what they're showing. Right now we have the Pacific starting to quiet down a little bit. We're seeing a western ridge develop here in the longer range, and we're seeing a negative NAO in place as well. Now we have both of those things in place with troughing kind of centered at times a little bit too progressive, but over here into the eastern US and into the Atlantic. So kind of what it means, in my opinion, is we have multiple things working for us as opposed to us, and we don't have to. Again, when the more you can stack your team, the better. The more better players you can have, the better it can oftentimes work out for people that want snow. Again, the better team doesn't always win every single game in a season, but when you have the better players on your roster, you have more things working for you in your advantage, it oftentimes can work out in your favor. So we got to keep an eye on here, and again, look even persistent even after eastern troughing, still kind of almost negatively tilted to kind of the idea there, and Western Ridge and the Greenland block still in place on that 18Z ensemble run. Euro ensembles, again, this is 18Z, but 12s, you can see a general idea too. Big Western Ridge, negative NAO, beautiful spot for a trough. And again, keep an eye. I think this 6th to 8th time frame is becoming pretty interesting, and then also this 9th to 11th, maybe I would call it, maybe into the 12th, hard to say, and maybe something after even too. We could get in a really active, stormier, colder pattern here that could allow a lot of opportunities for people in the eastern side of the United States, including Midwest, South, Southeast, Mid-Atlantic, Northeast, potentially get into winter weather. And I would favor currently farther eastern US, I would favor the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast in this pattern to be able to have a good opportunity to cash out here. as we start to transition to this new pattern. I hope you all are having, again, a happy holidays. We'll try to go live soon, but in the moment, I gotta try to take the rest while I can, because I think we're gonna get pretty active here, and I'm gonna get very, very busy. So I'm kind of prepping. We've got new setups. We've kept doing technology on the stream, so we're gonna have some fun. Don't worry, guys. It's coming. It's coming. Be patient here, and we'll keep following along. And hope you all are having happy holidays, and let's keep this good winter energy going into the new year.